So let me start with you, Effie. You're one of the women in the fintech industry. You thought deeply about how the blockchain technology can impact the financial industry. Can you tell us how blockchain, or can blockchain, be the de-risking technology for heavy regulated industry like the financial industry?
Sure. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you for the introduction. And since it was Women's International Day, and yesterday I actually attended a wonderful gathering at ETH by the country head of Citibank, who's on the board of this Advanced Swiss Women in Business, and it was a wonderful reminder of the many things that need to be done for gender equality. And I hope that we touch upon that and how blockchain can help that. So now, switching to your question about the finance industry, since I actually come from that world, I spent more than 15 years, the first 15 years of my career on Wall Street, and I know firsthand what it means to be in that male industry and what it means to be in that now heavily regulated industry, because it wasn't then. I guess the heavy regulations, as we all know, started after the subprime crisis. And I really do think that we need to clearly see that blockchain can de-risk this industry. In what sense? I mean, I'm thinking of the huge web of financial products out there that nobody knows how to manage, risk management, or how to track. I'm not talking only about the web of debt, corporate, private, government. I'm thinking of, simple over-the-counter products like swaps or all sorts of other structured products. I'm thinking of collateral management, huge financial issue. I'm thinking of how to measure and monitor counterparty risk. All these were big themes during the subprime crisis. I hope you realize that during that crisis, nobody, no regulator, not even big companies knew what their counterparty risk was. It took them days, weeks, months to calculate. So I see blockchain technology as an ideal way to manage these and alleviate the pain and the burden on the regulators, on the governments, and actually on the banks themselves, because the burden is on them and affects their behavior. So that's, in a nutshell, what I see. And I hope that in 2018 we see, for example, ISDA, the International Swap and Derivatives Association, have a first use case instead of seeing, companies like Coinbase, and there's nothing wrong with it, but it is a successful use case. We would like to see something like that.
Awesome, thank you, Effie. Mark, you literally just jumped here to the panel, out of the plane actually. Happy to having you here. You're advising countries, governments, people to implement the blockchain technology. And in this regard, smart city is a big issue for you as well. So can you tell us how government and citizens can use the blockchain technology for living?
Absolutely, thank you. Thank you for having me on the panel. Thank you to the audience for putting your lunches down early and coming to listen to us. We do appreciate it. Some of the work that we do at BitFury, you're right, is with governments and large organizations around the world. And I'd just like to tell a little story about my own business planning failures. About 2 years ago, I was speaking to the senior management of BitFury, which, by the way, is one of the world's largest blockchain companies. And I suggested that blockchain would be taken up by the large companies around the world, supply chain, large manufacturers, that they would see the light first and that they would be clamoring over themselves to realize the value of blockchain. And here we are, probably 18 months, 2 years later, and I was so wrong, because these companies are slowly experimenting, but they're certainly not clamoring over themselves. And the organizations that I thought would be the slowest, governments and public bodies, are actually those that are adopting this technology the fastest. And the reason they're adopting this technology really is driven by 2 points. The first is that being a government is quite a competitive business these days. And using blockchain to create competitive advantage, perhaps to attract talent to your country, perhaps, dare I say, to gain PR, or perhaps to try and encourage your innovators and your entrepreneurs to create competitive advantage over and above other countries. They're quite forceful drivers for governments. And they also know that by deploying blockchain-based technologies, they can create trust, which is something that's been undermined with their citizens. So there are many reasons why these blockchain applications that we're working with governments are being adopted more quickly than perhaps they are in the commercial sector. And I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the projects we're working on to give you examples of real applications. The first one is, I think many of us will have traveled to get to this conference today. A few I know that I've bumped into are local, and you're very lucky. But if you've traveled here by air and then hired a car, here's what you probably experienced. You probably went to the car hire counter, you gave them your credit card, you gave them your driving license. They dutifully checked that your reservation was in the system. Safe and securely in the system? Absolutely. Then what they do is they photocopy your credit card. They photocopy your driving license, and then they very carefully take this paper, they trot behind their desk, and they pop it in a filing cabinet, which I dare say is probably rarely locked, in an international airport that has thousands, if not millions, of travelers going through it. So your identity now sits in a filing cabinet that may or may not be locked in an environment where thousands of people are coming through every day. Perfect for potential identity theft. So blockchain could help alleviate that challenge by creating a digital identity, and one whereby you now don't need to give your driving license to be photocopied. You don't need to give any of your details over to this agency. You just give them, say, a 4 or 5-digit code or a private key, public key combination. And what that does is it interrogates the database. The database confirms that you are within a certain category and therefore allowed to hire a car from them because you fall within their insurance risk category, and that you have the valid permit within your country of residence to attest to the fact that you are a bona fide driver. Your details stay safe and secure. They don't go to the agency, yet the agency has surety, they have certainty that you are an individual that they can rent that car to. That's an application that we're looking at building with a government within Europe. And another one that we're looking at is to do with healthcare. So in a similar vein, if you are a citizen in need of healthcare, the chances are your details are publicized very widely within a healthcare system. So your data is in the hands of many healthcare professionals, some of whom you might want to deal with, others that might not be very good at their job because it's just it's a statistical probability. But your data is with those people, whether you think they're good, whether you think they aren't, and you can't really control that. So we're looking at ways with the UK government whereby blockchain could allow you, again, through a combination of public key, private key, to choose to share your data with your provider of choice for healthcare, and only share that data that's relevant to your particular case. Your data, again, doesn't get sent to that practitioner. They're just able to consult it for a period of time. And if you decide you no longer want to use that medical practitioner, you can revoke access and your data stays exactly where it was. They just can't see it anymore.
Great.
Now, that's quite interesting for not just you as an individual and protecting your data, but also for the healthcare system. Because if you imagine you're involved in an accident, say on the way to the airport, heaven forbid today I had a little crash and I hurt my ankle, and they gave me some painkillers, and because of my jet lag I went to sleep. And they couldn't ask me vital questions about who I am I diabetic, and they don't know. But if this system that we're looking at with the UK government existed, that health provider could query through perhaps a public key, which was permission in emergencies, to access some of that data. They can consult it but don't have it, and yet whilst I'm unconscious because of the painkillers, they can give me the relevant care. So there are a few of the examples that we're working on. I know we need to keep it brief. We have another 4 or 5 as well, and we'd be delighted to talk with you.
No, but thanks, Mark, and thanks to pushing or moving the conversation a little bit away from the financial perspective, because we were in the morning already really deep into that. Nevertheless, we're moving a little bit back to the finance perspective as well, because William, you have been the advisor of the Ethereum Foundation, and you wrote the book, The Business Blockchain. You're obviously familiar with both, with the technology itself and also with the cryptocurrencies. So what do you think are the challenges to implement a new technology and a new financial system?
Sure. So I like to divide the market into two parts in terms of who is participating in these implementations. You have to look at it from the incumbents today, which are mostly the big companies that are discovering the blockchain and trying to figure out how to bring it into their companies. And then on the other side, you have the startups and the new companies that are innovating. And each one of them has a different set of challenges. So for the big companies, the big challenges that they have is that they are tied in by their business model. So everything they do is going to tie back to the business model that already is working for them. So for them, when they talk about innovation and trying to apply the blockchain, there's so much they can do. So although they will tell you that they will be changing and innovating and moving into new projects, they are limited really because they are not going to do something very, very new. For them, improving a process by 5% or doing something a bit faster or saving a little bit of money here and there is a big achievement. So the challenge for them is going to be really the fact that the blockchain is not going to be kind of much of a changing technology for them, not as disruptive to them as they would like to tell you that. On the other hand, the startups are really the innovators. I mean, I have the opportunity to work on both sides of the market, both with big companies and with small companies. And with the startups, their challenge is to apply the blockchain properly. What I'm seeing recently now is that the blockchain as a technology is being misused. And we are trying to invoke the name of the blockchain to just say we're going to do anything on the blockchain just because it is the new technology. But in reality, a lot of the projects that I see do not need the blockchain. So one of the asset tests I ask them is, do you really need the blockchain? Do you really need the token? And tell me why you need it and what would happen if you didn't use the blockchain. And in many cases, you can do it on the database. Their challenge is to get users. So most of these startups start with 0 users. So they have to get users and bring them on board. And that's their challenge. And there is another subset of startups which are really not startups, but not incumbents, but they are this new set of new companies that are medium to small, and they are moving into the blockchain space. And these could be like small banks, for example, like Moro is one of them that are seeing the opportunity, and they are more nimble than the big banks. And these are the new intermediaries, I think, that can stand to gain big market shares in blockchain services. And that's another category that I see a lot of hope for.
Great, thank you. Olinga, you are the member of the board of a big foundation with 5 devices under it. You've done the first ICO in the UK last year under the FCA, and yet you are the founder of Blockchain Alliance for Good. So what do you think, how we can create something good through the blockchain technology so everyone can trust or even more trust in that technology?
Okay, so I think the best thing is to relay our experience in this sector. The key to trust is that the people you're speaking to have to be non-partisan, agnostic, with not their own agenda. The reality is that most blockchain conferences, everyone is selling to each other. You know, I mean, I'm self-harming when I come to these conferences because everyone's just pitching and pitching and pitching, and you just want to kill yourself, you know. So we found, you know, we set up, I retired about a decade ago from a good private career, and I did well, and I was fortunate to retire. My colleague there, CEO Barbara, from a very senior banking position, she retired about 6, 7 years ago. And we founded a Center for Citizenship, Enterprise and Governance, a not-for-profit foundation in 2011, to be non-partisan think tank without any agenda, to try and advise. And we found the best way to do this is to bring out instruments to do this. And the first division we set up was metrics. So we became the largest provider on non-financial value metrics in the world. We underpin a couple of laws in the UK, the Social Value Act. Today we released the Modern Slavery Act with Theresa May. There are metrics for India, Mauritius, Indonesia, 5 in the EU. From there, we moved on. We have about 215 staff, and we have 117,000 members around the world. The second division, we went from the measurement of non-financial value to transacting value. It's not enough saying, I feel love. You've got to be able to actually transact it, send it to someone, right? So that's the story of all my divorces, okay? So, yeah. So I guess we went to transaction through blockchain. And we now have around 30 people in blockchain, half of which are coders. We did the first ICO with FCA last year. We built a platform, and we have another around 20 ICOs coming out now. We have Student Coin in 2 weeks' time. We have Women's Coin with Lady Bamford in 4 weeks' time. We have a Black Coin with Rihanna, Jay-Z, and Beyonce, et cetera, and Oprah Winfrey in about 3 months' time. So we have a platform where we will fund, because we're kind of cash rich. So we fund about 2.5 to 5 million private placement initially, and off they go. And then they've got to fund the whole, through the ICO. In blockchain, we found that the areas of interest are provenance of products, where we do a lot of projects, and cryptocurrencies. Third division we set up is in education. So we have 15 universities in something called Cyber Futures with Microsoft, Tata, British Telecom, and Informa, where we are trying to form an educoin and a platform, an educational digital ledger, a ledger for knowledge, which some of the colleagues actually discussed right now. The fifth division, we became, last year in October, we became ability to become a digital university with some university domain names. So we want to educate about blockchain around the world through MOOCs and online courses and give you degrees and certificates. And the fifth one, which is why I was here in Switzerland, we realized that the problem about blockchain, is that there doesn't to be, one of the issues is there's no institutional level consultancy and advisory. There are loads of great people who are advisors. But the problem is banks, family offices, investment houses, high net worth, et cetera, governments, they require institutional level investment advice. And it's not, if you invested 100 million from an impact investment fund into an ICO and you lost it, which is generally speaking about what's going to happen, then they go, why have you put 100 million? Because Alinga told me so. And you go, oh my God, you imbecile. If you said I put 100 million because McKinsey said so, and we lost it, then it gives you coverage, okay? So we formed
not anymore,
a company
probably.
called Rothbardi & Co., based in Switzerland, to give institutional advice at this level. So I guess our entire approach is to be agnostic, non-partisan, and neutral. So we find the best way to advise people is to come from a neutral zone.
Awesome. Thank you. Mauro, coming to you. You're working in blockchain since 2013, and actually you brought to Bank Frick the blockchain in 2016, when I'm right? And also to Liechtenstein for that. Tell us, how can banks implement and use blockchain instead of being offensive about the technology?
Yes, that's exactly what's really surprising for me, because when you understand blockchain, you know that it's a huge benefit for banks. It's a new service. You can offer a lot of new services to clients out there, to bank the unbanked, to help them with services. And for me, we are actually at the point before a new industrial revolution, and not from the old industry, so from the banking industry. We in Switzerland, banks never changed the last 50 years. They are doing exactly the same like they have done 50 years ago. And now there's the opportunity to really change, to make something new, to offer services to people who never used their services, to, for example, help guys who say, okay, I would like to invest in crypto, but I don't like to have this private key and HSM solution and whatever. Why can I do it with my bank? Because that's what banks are for, to store assets safe in a bank. the case with the digital identity, if I would like to have it something stored really safe, why am I not able to make it at my bank with a financial institution that's fully regulated and that's working under law, that it has an audit every year, and yes, that is not there to do something really wrong, and that's what I think is there. We can really change the world from the financial sector, and that's why we from Bank Frick are really open for crypto, for blockchain, and are here to help the world to change the actual case.
Great, thank you. So we heard a lot about trust, neutrality, we heard about banks, and in the other panels we heard also that blockchain is kind of a hype right now and comparable with the internet we had years ago. Would you agree in that argument that blockchain is the new internet, and we got actually access to the internet through our devices, through smartphones? Is there something we can have to implement this technology in our day-by-day life? William, what do you think? Is there some devices which helps us to do that?
What we need to have is more applications. By the way, Mauro, did we just, how come we have the same socks here? What's going on here? It's the first day I met him, so there's something that we have to do business eventually, I think.
Exactly, we will.
The same color of the shoes as well. Well done.
Anyways, so what I'd like to see more of is consumer applications that when you use them, you don't know that there's a blockchain behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And when people ask me, how can we get exposed to the blockchain? And I try to give them examples. There aren't too many of them, but I'll just name a few. For example, today you can buy and sell products using the blockchain, but not knowing it's on the blockchain. There's a company called Open Bazaar, and disclosure, I'm an investor on the board as well. But they are a peer-to-peer marketplace that allows anyone to buy and sell anything from anywhere in the world. Mm-hmm. And the blockchain is behind the scenes, and they use Bitcoin as a currency. So it's like eBay without eBay. Yeah. So we need, and then there's another company called Steemit, where you can publish content and you earn tokens, real money, if users upvote your content or if they write comments on your content and then they interact with your content. So you are really getting compensated for your attention. Yeah. And that is something we didn't have before. So I like to look for cases where we are given something that we could not do before without the blockchain. Mm-hmm. Third example is CryptoKitties. Who has not heard of CryptoKitties? Who owns a CryptoKitty? Does anybody? A couple here. So CryptoKitties is a new game that took the blockchain by storm in December. And it's a way to buy and sell kitties, little cats that are very unique. But they are digital assets, and they are native assets, meaning that they are born on the blockchain. So part of the computation on the blockchain happens with a unique DNA, and it generates a unique kitty that you buy, and you can breed them. Now you can give them hats, you can dress them. But that is an excellent example of an application that could not exist without the blockchain. So we need to see more of those. And you can interact with this kind of game or buying and selling without really knowing that you're interacting with the blockchain.
So Linga, when we're talking about education, is that something we need to work on? Educate the people to understand what is blockchain really about, next to or beside all the funding and money raising?
Right, so that's a very interesting point. I think, like yourself, we sit on a APPG, the All Parliamentary Committee, in the UK, and Barbara, I know, sits on that committee. And one of the things we do, we say it's blockchain. Don't talk about ICOs. Don't talk about cryptocurrency, because that's a dreadful word. It's a terrible swear word. Don't talk about that. The reality is, however, when you're coming to education, to anyone, students, anyone, you've got to touch people where they're interested in, right? So if you say blockchain, it's a big yawn, isn't it? No one gives a damn about blockchain, okay, out there. It's just like the other work we do, social stuff. Everyone yawns and goes environmental, social. Who's interested? You've got to touch people where their interest is, which everyone knows about cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. And you start with that and say these are instruments for structural change, which is what we're all interested in. We're instruments for structural change. So the blockchain, blockchain is just a enabling technology. We're about to bring out a journal, on a peer review. Now this is really boring. A peer-reviewed journal, academic journal on blockchain. You really want to self-harm, don't you? So, but I guess so. Blockchain, I think, should is at the level of undercore, in 20 years' time, in 10 years' time, I'm going to say something terrible here. None of the businesses, probably including ours, will exist, okay? Because like the early days of internet, they all come and will all have gone. The great things will last will be blockchain. But the points that we are touching points now have got to be around cryptocurrency, Bitcoin and ICOs. Those are the exciting parts. You've got to live with it.
Do you mind if I just add a
Please.
little perspective here? I'm going to draw on my personal life. So my son, who's 14 years old, is involved in crypto. Not surprising, given where his dad is. And he moved very quickly from having a love for Bitcoin to now exploring other cryptocurrencies, and through platforms like Steemit and his gaming, he would call it a hobby. I actually call it an addiction. He now is of the view that not only does he not want change and notes, real world money in his pockets, because it can fall out. It's a pain in the backside. And frankly, where am I going to spend it? He's moved on from Bitcoin, and now he wants other currencies. And he is actively seeking, at 14 years old, he's actively seeking frictionless ways of living in his world at 14. So as I look around this room, I don't see too many 14, 18-year-olds. And here we are sitting talking about blockchain. To the point about education, we're self-educating here, almost to the point of self-harming. Yeah. But the population that's coming is already consuming this technology. So my message to us in this audience is to get on with the business of testing, executing, teaching, and finding out how to learn this technology, use this technology, because the generation that's coming is already consuming it. And we're frankly getting left behind. So if you're a government, if you're a big business, if you're a passionate enthusiast, you need to start. How many people have Bitcoin here? How many? Show of hands. Okay, that's not too bad. How many people have Monero? Okay, it's not too bad. It should be 80, 90%. Because if we're playing with the technology, then we can really talk about it. But if all we're doing is talking about it, guys, we're not doing a good enough job.
Let me quickly jump in.
I want to add to that. Coming from the Wall Street world, I talk to my buddies that are still there, whether they're in a city on the street. None of them have a wallet. They keep talking to me about this world. They want to understand it conceptually. None of them. I'm stunned. Come on, your PA just put $10 in there just to open a wallet. Yeah. There is very small percentage of people where in the financial industry that actually have a wallet.
Yeah, let us jump quickly to Mauro, because he is working at a bank. I think you can give us a great insight. You were talking about bank the D-bank, right? What does, D-bank the bank? You need to actually get...
There are two cases, so one case is definitely bank the unbanked or unbanked the bank. Right. There are these two cases, and for me it's more or less the same, because if I have crypto and I was not that early in crypto invested, so I have not that much. So it's fine for me to hold my private keys, but if I have 10 millions, I'm scared. I don't like to go out because someone knows that I have 10 millions in my treasury at home. He will visit me and I have a problem. But when I can keep it at the bank, for example, that they store my private keys for these assets, that's a huge benefit. That's, for example, what I brought to Bank Frick, and that's what we're offering now. There are a lot of guys out there who made millions, and definitely really big numbers of millions in crypto, and they are happy to use our service for some portion of their money. They are happy to have 1 million at home and 10K on their mobile wallet, but not the big amounts. For the big amounts, there needs to be something that's safe, that's regulated, that's secure, and that's liable for the loss of assets. If I make something wrong and I send the money not to his mobile wallet, I send it to Olinga's wallet, it's my problem, and I have to pay it as a bank. And that's what I really like.
What is the role of Liechtenstein when we're already talking about bank and your bank? What is the role of Liechtenstein in that in the world of cryptocurrencies right now?
So I think Liechtenstein and Switzerland work really good and really close together. We have really good relationships with a lot of people and companies from Crypto Valley. A huge benefit from Liechtenstein is the European Economic Area access. We are part of the EEA, and for example, last week it was announced there are now 3 fully regulated AIFs, alternative investment funds, that are investing only in crypto, and we can passport them all over Europe without any problem. If we would have done this through Switzerland, it would be a problem because it's not possible, because it's not the same regulation. But in the end, it's really close together, and we have some benefits.
Olinga, please.
Just a a quick, little tiny anecdote going back to Effie's point. When we came across blockchain was 2016, and honestly, I didn't even know how to spell blockchain. And we had a conference at University of Cambridge, and we were all these academics, we were all boring academics sitting around a room, and in came two guys who are now on our board. I mean, the first guy, Eric Guo, who did NEO, is the founder, but Chandler Guo came in, and Chandler Guo is a guy who's 34. He's 4 years ago was a butcher. Okay, he owns a third of Ethereum in the world and $10 billion of Bitcoin. And he came in from China, and his English was developing at the time. And we sat with him, and we all were giving these academic conferences about, blockchain and Bitcoin. And he went, let me ask you, how many of you own Bitcoin? And not one of us in the room owned Bitcoin.
Awesome.
And I remember thinking, wow, your point, you got to play. And if you're not with it, you're not playing with it. And so you can't develop it.
I mean, to that
Effie,
point
please.
too, another real application, like William spoke about Open Bazaar before, is Etherisk, this Swiss European company in the insurtech sector, where you can actually today buy travel insurance, and it looks like an app and so on. And we were together with the founder in Oman on a blockchain summit last fall, and he asked this question to the audience, who was working groups and everybody and so on, who has a wallet? And it was just 2 or 3 people there. He said, the first thing, just get a wallet, get in touch with this reality.
Great.
In the future, the wallets will be inside our apps. So this smartphone, anybody that has a smartphone has a lot of apps, but not too many apps have a wallet inside of them. And I did a survey not too long ago, and possibly next year, 10% of the apps that you interact with on a daily basis will have a wallet built into them. So whether you like it or not, you will be owning some kind of token or cryptocurrency.
Right. Great. Coming back to you, Mark, we were talking about governments, we were talking about the future of living, actually. How do you imagine the future world run by blockchain technology? Maybe you can give us some insights to that.
Yeah, so I'll share with you a discussion I had just yesterday at an energy conference in Houston. So we sat down with an energy provider, an automobile manufacturer, and an energy trading company. And what they said was, could you build us something whereby a self-driving car, an electric self-driving car, could reroute to a house which was self-generating electricity using solar, that had an excess of solar and had dumped it into its batteries and was offering it up for sale, in a way that the car would know that its route had enough time within it for it to reroute, stop by this house, it knew the price of electricity, could auto-connect and settle with that house, drive over a wireless charging zone, and then upcharge the electricity, settle the payments, and then continue on its journey. Now, that sounds rather far-fetched if you think of the whole story. But if you break it down into the component pieces of what needs to happen for that to be available, it's not very far away. And as we think about the cities of the future, these types of applications are probably going to be real in our lifetime. Now, blockchain is not going to be the technology that makes or breaks that particular application, but it's certainly going to be one of the enablers. And we will move away in the future from a point where we're talking about wallets and who has cryptocurrency to the point where we're just consuming the applications. And our phones, our devices, whatever they might be, in 5 or 6 years' time, become our passports to access services, to be able to travel, to pay for certain services or assets, and to be able to interact with each other and prove each other's identities. So we see going forwards that the conversation is going to move, we believe, very rapidly away from ICOs and cryptocurrencies. Not that as our heart at Bitfury, because that's where we started 8 years ago. Our DNA is in Bitcoin. We're very, very bullish on Bitcoin, but it served a magnificent purpose, which has been to create awareness and to begin driving this education. We see that the future is going to be something which is not a discussion always talking about cryptocurrencies. It'll be the auto-consumption of services, the auto-access to facilities, and the ability to travel, which will have blockchain built into it, but which we will pay zero attention to. How many of you here know the difference between TCP/IP and, say, a DNS server? No, okay, probably 5, maybe 7%. You don't need to know, but you're all surfing the web right now. You're all tweeting various things. You're consuming the technology, but you don't care how it works. And that's where we're going to get to with, I think, governments and cities of the future. Blockchain will play a part in that, but Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies have played a larger part in starting that education. But we are doing a very bad job as an industry of educating the parties that need to be educated. I go back to my 14-year-old son. If we want this technology to accelerate at the rate it should to realize the opportunity, we have to be out creating new ways of educating. Churning children through schools, teaching them about Shakespeare is interesting culturally, but it's not making a massive contribution to what could be a very interesting revolution from a technology perspective.
Great, thank you. We already heard today that we are already working since 10 years with the technology blockchain, and they're still missing use cases, or we're still missing use cases, right? I think Ralph was telling us that earlier. I'm wondering, are we running too slow with the technology? Is it just that we are not educating too much, or is it actually not ready to be in public, so in total?
Could I give 30 seconds and I pass the floor to my esteemed panelists? So in terms of use cases at scale, I would beg to differ with you. In the Republic of Georgia, we have a land titling service, which is now available to a population of 4.5 million people. 60% of the assets in land in that country are now registered on the blockchain. So if that's not scale, 4.5 million people, 60% of the assets in that country, I don't know what is. But are we moving quickly enough? With real-world applications, no. And I fear we're moving too quickly on the hype side. So the hype cycle is probably doing us more harm than we could do if we really focused on deploying the technology.
Effie, what do we need to bring it into life? What do you think?
I mean, there are areas where we are already starting to see applications and they're less risky, like science. I have a good example where they're starting to address the problem of what's called reproducibility, which means we have all these academic research publications that nobody, in esteemed journals, and nobody can reproduce the results and so on. So that's a fantastic use case where they're starting to use blockchain to address this issue. We have excellent examples where in rural areas where there's no electricity, no internet, how do you give a digital ID and all the rest that's in the wallet through a 2G phone? Right now, it's the project is with the UN, and I hope that we see the reality of it next year. So there's a lot in the pipeline as we speak. There's a lot going on, and I'm very hopeful that the damage that can be done by a huge accident in this ICO hype won't stop the good things that are going on.
Awesome.
While we speak.
Thank you. As we have so great experts on the panel right now, I would love to open the panel for the audience and give you the opportunity to ask questions. Are there any questions? Please identify yourself. And do we have a mic? Awesome.
Hi, I'm Jonas Pacelli. I study at the University of Bocconi, and I'd like to challenge the idea of scalability because, yes, there might be some governmental form of blockchain which is scalable, but if you look at the example of CryptoKitties mentioned before, within 2 days or so, it took up 20% of all transaction fees, and suddenly it took 12 to 24 hours to send Ethereum around. And you also have that issue with Bitcoin as well, that it sometimes takes hours upon hours to transact.
William, it's probably a question for you.
I'll take a shot at it. I mean, this is not any different that than what ever happened to the internet in its early days. Scalability is an issue that is going to be solved. You put enough engineers in a room, they will solve it over time. The issue with CryptoKitties is the equivalent of a rush hour. So we shouldn't kind of confuse that for the fact that the road is not good. This was a new innovative application that took even the creators of CryptoKitties by surprise. And we had a bit of rush hour, but all of them are working to solve this scalability issue. And if we don't solve the scalability issue of the blockchain, I think there is no future for it. But I know there are enough resources that are being directed to it, and it'll be solved over time.
Great, thank you. You want to add something, Mark?
Yeah, sure. You know, CryptoKitties is a great example of an application being built that wasn't built in the same way as you would build, say, a robust application for a government. It was kind of speculative, it was fun, and I think the success of CryptoKitties surprised even those who launched it. You don't get the same thing in a government application. You know, there are very few surprises, or if there are, you plan for contingencies around them. So I think the comparison between CryptoKitties and then suggesting that land registry might not be a great application is probably a little bit strenuous to create that link. But I take your point. You know, there are scalability challenges, and it's about the choice of platform. So if you want to build an application which requires high throughput, very, very fast settlement of transaction, you're probably not going to use the Bitcoin blockchain. You might use Exonom, which is our private blockchain, with a transaction speed of 10,000 transactions, or settlement time of 2.5 seconds.
Yeah.
Or you might use a combination of a private permissioned blockchain and anchor that system state view into the Bitcoin blockchain and use the technologies in a more appropriate way. So to me, it's about the architecture of the solution rather than broad brush challenging the whole blockchain ecosystem and suggesting it's not fit for purpose at the moment.
Great, thank you. So before we do a final round, maybe we have a last question from the audience. Yeah, over there.
Thanks. My name is Ralph. I wanted to speak about the unbanked crypto firms. So there's the unbanked in the world, and then there's the unbanked crypto firms. So Olinga, so you have UK bank accounts with these projects. One question, and the other question to Mauro: how is it that your firm can serve these clients and others just don't?
No, me either.
I didn't hear the last part. You said, do we have a UK bank account?
Yeah, I mean, you're issuing crypto now,
Yes.
right, with some of these projects.
Yes.
You can bank these.
Yes, because we do it in the UK, it's on fiat as well through UK bank accounts, correct, as well as normal crypto.
Because you talked to Theresa May, or because...
Yes, just last night, no, yes. No, yeah, because we did it with FCA guidance, we are able to take normal currencies in, and that's a whole set of new problems, by the way, but yes. I guess, you know, one of the things about banked and unbanked, this is a very good point about also the unbanked, crypto unbanked, you know, is that we have found there are many people who want to go into crypto now, but like you said, finding it a major problem. And so in our sector, this is kind of a roundabout way of answering this, but in our sector, timing is absolutely pretty well perfect. Things like social innovation and non-financial transaction has hit a ceiling. Impact investing, faith investing is not making any progression. Private banking is actually struggling now as well. You know, so they're looking for new instruments, and we are slow. As a boring academic institution, we are slow. We have 9 white papers, and most people just rush off, do the ICO, and then they publish a paper, don't they? But we are slow. But we have found that slowness allows us to think a lot more to widen the agenda. And recently, we brought out what we call a social impact bond 2.0, a impact bond, which is a financial bet on a social outcome, which does not work. For 5 years, it has not worked in the industry around the world with normal currency, but it's now working because crypto is rising so fast. And we're reaching, the people who are investing in that are from the impact investment sector. It's called Growth Token, and they invest because they get regular stuff like tax incentives, EIS, SEIS. They get all the stuff they understand, and the dividends, and if you compare for them, normal impact investing is 13.2% return on ROI. Crypto is 1,320.
Great.
And it enables everything to change. It means that we can now deliver social projects because the big value, Bitcoin and blockchain is the movement of value from A to B. But in our sector, other things have value, doesn't it? Love has value, kindness has value, hope has value, generosity has value. And what we see this has done is allow the movement of non-financial value from A to B. And that is where we see the big revolution.
Beautiful, thank you. Nice last statement, actually. We're running out of time, unfortunately, but I know that most of you are going to stay till the evening, so I bet you have the chance to get in contact with all of you. I want to use the last 3 minutes for a final statement of each of you, so you have 30 seconds. And yeah, please, Effie, would you like to start?
The social impact is already here in the sense that we are already stretching our thinking, stretching and pushing our belief systems through this technology, and it doesn't matter if the specific, blockchain, Bitcoin, Ethereum survives, but we have stretched that, and we are pushing ourselves to solve all the big problems that are around poverty, inequality, the 9 billion people that are coming, and we are looking and we are in consensus for solutions. And thanks to Bitcoin, we have agreed that these are the big problems, and we're in the phase where we think that blockchain will solve it all. Maybe not, but we will find. So we're on the right path. The impact has been achieved.
Awesome, thank you. Mark.
So I think the technology is here. What we've seen in 2017, thanks in large part to ICOs, is a redistribution of some wealth. Whether you believe ICOs are a good or bad thing, I'd like to lay a point of view around the positivity of ICOs and just remind everybody that in perhaps 18 months, the concept of an ICO went from exactly that, a concept, to representing something that generated more investment into startups than the entire VC industry did. And that has caused innovation, allowed innovation, and will continue. So the technology is real, redistribution of wealth has taken place, and we're enjoying it.
Wonderful, thank you, Mark. William, 30 seconds for you.
Yes, I'd like to see more applications and use cases where there's no other choice but using the blockchain. So there's only one choice, and we need more of those kinds of applications, and that would be my wish.
Thank you. Olinga, your 30 seconds.
Make it 15. Okay, so I'm an old guy at 57, probably the oldest man in blockchain, I've been told, by the way. But
15 already gone.
The last time I was this happy, I was 11. And the reason is, at 57, I'm now making some structural change to the world and helping in a tiny bit. And blockchain has enabled that to happen. So who can ask for more? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Olinga. I keep it short. So I think we're here at a point to really change the world. We can all work together, change something, and that's what we're here for. We should help each other and not say, okay, the other guy does something bad, this does something good. That's the goal, and that's where we should be.
Beautiful words. Thank you, Mauro. Thanks to all of you. It was a great discussion, it was a great panel. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for the nice panel discussion. Thank you.